D-Day. Over 6,000 American casualties in just one day, the battle that buried the Nazi Empire. After concentrating all its forces on the Eastern Front, Nazi Germany launched a lightning assault on the Soviet Union. At one point, German troops were just 30 kilometers from Moscow as the crow flies. The Soviet capital stood on the edge of collapse. Stalin knew the Red Army couldn't hold out forever, and if Moscow fell, the world would belong to Hitler. In a moment of desperation, Stalin sent a grim warning to the Western Allies. Open a second front in the West, or Moscow will fall. And if that happens, Hitler will rule the world. But at the time, the United States and Britain simply weren't ready. They lacked the troops, the ships, the resources for a full-scale invasion of Western Europe. They needed time and the right moment. By 1944, that moment had finally arrived. After two devastating defeats at Stalingrad and Kursk, Germany's eastern forces had been severely weakened. Sensing the tide had turned, the Allied powers, the US, Britain, and Canada, decided to act. A grand plan was set into motion. The goal, to open a new front and pierce Hitler's Atlantic Wall. And so, the largest amphibious invasion in human history began. Normandy, the Day of Judgment, begins before dawn on June 6, 1944. German forces stood guard along the beaches of Normandy, the core of Hitler's so-called Atlantic Wall. A chain of bunkers, artillery nests, minefields, barbed wire, and tank traps stretched across the northern coast of France.
Quiet night again.
Roughly 60,000 German
quiet,
troops were
maybe.
stationed at key defensive points. They waited, hidden in concrete fortifications, behind MG-42 machine guns, weapons capable of firing over 1,200 rounds per minute, their sound like bone being torn by a saw. In the dark, they didn't know what was coming. But in the skies above, the storm was already gathering. Transport planes opened their doors. Thousands of American and British paratroopers jumped into the night. No lights, no safe landings, only wind, flak, and prayers lost in the darkness. Offshore, a sight never before seen in human warfare unfolded. More than 5,000 Allied warships filled the horizon. Above them, over 11,000 aircraft roared through the sky. Fighters, bombers, transports, reconnaissance, waves upon waves, like an iron hurricane. Below deck, 156,000 soldiers from the US, Britain, and Canada sat in silence, hands clenched around rifles, eyes fixed on countdown watches. Some whispered prayers, others stared at worn photos of loved ones. They all knew the gates of hell were about to open, and hell struck first. Before the landing crafts could reach shore, German artillery thundered from above. 80mm cannons, mortars, and MG-42s opened fire on the incoming waves. Water erupted like a storm of blood. Some boats caught fire. Others were torn apart before troops could even disembark. There was no turning back. The soldiers exchanged looks, nodded, and the doors dropped. 6:30 a.m. Hundreds of landing ramps crashed open. Men stepped into the sea, water up to their waists, bullets slicing the air above, wet sand, cold wind, and in front of them, a wall of steel. Behind them, Allied naval guns unleashed hellfire. Battleships like USS Texas and HMS Warspite pounded bunkers, mines, and machine gun nests. Above, B-17 bombers carpeted inland positions. P-51s, Spitfires, Typhoons screamed overhead, firing rockets to support the ground advance. Amphibious Sherman DD tanks rolled off the waves. Many sank in the churning sea, but some made it to shore, clearing obstacles and supporting the infantry. American troops carried M1 Garands, Thompsons, grenades, and Bangalore torpedoes. British and Canadian soldiers brought Sten guns, Bren guns, and Piat anti-tank weapons, heavy but effective. Some units even carried flamethrowers to burn out dug-in defenders. But reaching the beach didn't mean survival. It was just the beginning. On the cliffs above, German defenders held their ground. They knew every angle, every kill zone. Every step the Allies took was inside their sights. MG-42s howled. Anti-tank guns, mortars, and long-range artillery rained fire down on the sand. Snipers picked off Allied officers from hidden bunkers. Behind the front lines, German armored reinforcements launched counterattacks, wave after wave of tanks and mechanized troops. In some sectors, the Allies advanced 100 meters, only to be pushed back 200. Some units were cut off completely, and some men, alone in sand pits with a single bullet left, waited for the end. But in the blood and steel, others rose, crawling forward, clutching cover, returning fire. Each yard was won through sweat, gunpowder, and whispered vows. If we don't take the beach today, tomorrow, the world will live in darkness. As the sun climbed higher, the battle only grew fiercer. German reinforcements poured in. Panzer tanks emerged from forest edges, silent as ghosts, then erupted in flames and steel. German troops hid in villages, turning every street into a death trap. The Allies pushed deeper. Self-propelled guns, armor, and infantry advanced through fields and ruins. Every road was a maze, every field a minefield. At Sword and Juno beaches, British and Canadian troops advanced up to 10 kilometers by day's end. At Omaha, Americans fought until nightfall, only then forcing the last defenders to retreat. When darkness returned, the earth still shook from artillery. The sky still burned with rocket trails. But by the end of June 6, 1944, the impossible had been done. And the cost was horrific. In just 24 hours, the U.S. suffered over 6,600 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing. The British lost around 2,700. The Canadians nearly 1,000. In total, over 10,000 Allied soldiers fell that day. At least 4,400 never returned. On the German side, casualties are harder to count, but estimates range from 4,000 to 9,000. One day, one beach, over 15,000 lives traded to change the course of history. And that was only the beginning.